For centuries, the Odyssey has been taught as the ultimate epic of nostos, the ancient Greek drive to return home, reclaim one's household, and peacefully reintegrate into society. A close reading of the text reveals a structural contradiction. Odysseus's own psychological choices create a persistent internal resistance to his homecoming. To isolate this resistance, we have to set aside the literal monsters and wrathful gods for a moment. The real evidence lies strictly in how Odysseus introduces himself to other characters. In these introductions, Odysseus speaks and acts as a soldier who refuses to leave the war behind. This behavior creates a friction between a plot pushing forward toward Ithaca and a protagonist who is rhetorically pulling backward. This tension is the focus of a 2021 master's thesis by Haley Ryan. She argues that while the poem's macro-narrative pushes relentlessly towards Ithaca, Odysseus functions as an anti-bard, crafting micro-narratives that resist this forward momentum. As an anti-bard, Odysseus weaponizes his own identity to oppose the overarching goals of his own story. He infects these localized narratives with kleos, the Iliadic concept of glory, bringing the violent values of the Trojan War into peacetime settings. Odysseus hijacks his own epic, using his trauma and rhetorical skill to stall a homecoming he is terrified to complete. This stagnation is most visible on the island of Ogygia. Mythologically, it is defined as a primeval void, disconnected from the rest of the world. Geographers have debated its counterpart for centuries, ranging from Strabo's theory of a mid-Atlantic location to modern identification with the isolated island of Gozo. Structurally, Ogygia represents narrative stasis. The plot of the epic physically cannot advance while Odysseus remains here with the nymph Calypso. It requires narrative force to move him, specifically the arrival of Hermes, bringing a direct mandate from Zeus to release the hero. Hermes' arrival acts as a structural intervention. The gods have to violently restart the poem. As noted in Ryan's text, during this moment of forced transition, Odysseus expresses an ironic longing for death on the battlefield at Troy, rather than continuing his journey home. The journey home only begins because external divine force ejects him from stasis, pushing against his underlying psychological desire to die a warrior. When Odysseus washes ashore in Book 6 and meets Princess Nausicaa, he is completely vulnerable. He shapes his identity as a helpless wanderer, omitting any mention of his military rank or past to secure immediate survival. By Book 9, he is safely hosted by King Alcinous, and his physical survival is guaranteed. Here, as highlighted in the thesis, he changes his rhetorical strategy. He officially names himself and immediately centers Kleos in his biography. Injecting military glory into a diplomatic plea for safe passage is highly irregular in a foreign court. The moment he is no longer fighting for basic survival, he defaults to his Iliadic identity. His peacetime persona is a tactical facade. In Books 9 through 12, Odysseus takes over as the active bard. This is where his resistance to nostos peaks, as he assumes total control of the narrative. He describes his unprovoked attack on the Ciconians, detailing the brutal pillaging and killing of an entire civilization. This behavior is severely displaced. It is a military raid executed during a peacetime commute home. This pattern escalates during his encounter with the Cyclops, where he aggressively boasts of his Achaean military reputation. Boasting about military rank means nothing to a solitary monster, and this arrogant display triggers the curse that derails his journey. Odysseus treats the entire Mediterranean as an extension of the Trojan battlefield, failing to read the reality of his non-combat environments. When facing the monster Scylla, he attempts to use standard military formations and armor against an eldritch horror. He executes this tactical response despite the witch Circe explicitly warning him that brute force will fail. Then there is the encounter with the sirens. Their allure is tailored specifically to his psychological trauma. Their song consists entirely of tales from the Trojan War and Kleos. He is so addicted to his own wartime past that he is willing to steer his crew into lethal danger just to hear his glory recounted. Odysseus eventually achieves his physical return to Ithaca, fulfilling the conditions of his nostos. Yet, upon waiting, and before recognizing he is home, he immediately fixates on his accumulated wealth and implicitly longs to continue wandering. This psychological disconnect culminates in the climax of the epic, the slaughter of the suitors trapped inside his home. The violence is extreme and graphic. Odysseus transforms his own dining room into a tactical kill zone. The ultimate act of reintegration into society is executed as a mass murder, proving that he brought the war home. As Ryan concludes, we have to question the premise of the epic. Is Nostos truly achieved if the hero never stopped acting like a warrior? This is the tragedy of the anti-bard. Odysseus controlled his own narrative so effectively that he destroyed the possibility at his own peace. We must stop reading the Odyssey as a straightforward hero's journey from point A to point B. The poem is a dark, psychological exploration of a veteran who cannot stop fighting a war that ended a decade ago. True homecoming requires surrendering the identity forged in combat, a sacrifice the hero of the Odyssey was ultimately unwilling to make.